Hey guys, have you heard of Clash Artifacts of Chaos? It's this cool game where you build a town that you defend from goblins and then train warriors and wizards to attack the goblins so you can get... Hello? Wait, what? Are you sure? Okay, but why did you call me instead of 911? So the first thing I have to say about this game is that I hate its name. Clash Artifacts of Chaos just reminds me of the awful iPhone wallet vampire, but this is actually a prequel to Xenoclash. And that sucks, because I liked that game, but I didn't even find out about this prequel until I just so happened to read about it on Wikipedia almost a year after it came out. The name Clash Artifacts of Chaos is a clunky mouthful that sounds like some microtransaction-smitten collectible card game MOBA. Xenoclash is a much better name for this series, so I'm gonna call this game Xenoclash 0 for the rest of this video. Try to stop me, I dare you. If you don't know anything about Xenoclash, it's a series of fantasy games where you use Stone Age diplomacy tactics to settle child custody disputes with hybrid manimal circus freaks. What I like most about them is that when I say they're fantasy games, I don't mean they draw ideas from the same grody pile of Norse and Greek mythology that every other fantasy game does. These games take absolutely nothing from your local government-instituted J.R.R. Tolkien Center, or really any mythology that I'm aware of, because everything in them is completely original. I really wish more fantasy games would do that. So, does Xenoclash 0 uphold the tradition of non-traditionalness that the other Xenoclash games do? Let's find out! Alright Pips, if you launch this game on Steam and it gets stuck installing Microsoft.NET Framework forever, you gotta go into this folder here and rename this file to something else. If some other game breaks after you do this, just name it back again. The first two Xenoclash games were first-person punchers, but when you start up this one, you'll see it's a Souls-like and seems to take a lot of inspiration from God of War 4 in particular. The story begins in the land of Xenozoic, when Pseudo, this game's RC fighter, witnesses this giant hairy face accidentally kill this old bird man, leaving his grandson with no one to look after him. Pseudo decides to help the boy, so he takes him to the palace to wait for a messenger he can hire to take the boy to his brother in the mountains. But when he gets to the palace, he finds out that Gemini, the ruler of this part of Xenozoic, wants to use the boy to save herself from some kind of sickness that's killing off all her heads one by one. The boy's not cool with that, so Pseudo has to take him to his brother himself while fighting off Gemini's mercenaries along the way.
Where is he?
In our village? In the Synectic Mountains?
Since this is a Souls-like, let's talk about how Dark Souls combat works.
Hey!
In Dark Souls, you're not allowed to back out of your attacks,
Hey, Jay!
so you have to be real careful about when you swing your sword.
Hey, Jay!
Xenoclash 0 mostly works the same way, but there's an extra game mechanic it added that...
Why are you ignoring me? Why, Jake? Why, Jake? Please talk to me, please!
So unlike Dark Souls, Xenoclash 0 lets you cancel your attack animation, but you have to...
You're tearing me apart, Jake, guys!
Alright, I'm listening. What is it, Tomash?
That guy fighting all those mutants has a head that's shaped like a cup.
Yeah, you're not the first person to point that out. And those little hairs in the crease going down the middle of his face aren't making the head allegations any easier to beat. At this point, you might say, now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. But I actually don't have that problem myself, because when I first laid eyes on Pseudo, the first place my mind went was Steve Odekirk's Thumb Wars.
What's your middle name?
Scooby-Dooby.
Ooby-Doob, Scooby-Dooby, Banooby?
One and the same.
And even after the resemblance was pointed out, the Thumb People Association is still stronger in my head. So Pseudo still reminds me more of Loke Groundrunner than Mara.
The thumb is strong in this one.
But I'm glad you brought up the topic of character appearances, since one of my favorite things about Xenoclash 0, and the Xenoclash games in general, is the creative character design.
I don't think I can defeat you. Because it looks like someone already did.
See this guy? The teeth he's missing on the top of his mouth are the same ones he still has on the bottom and vice versa. So when he shuts his jaw, he looks like he's not missing any teeth at all. See this guy on the beach? He's an elephant-human hybrid that also suffers from elephantasis. In other words, he's a double elephant man. Hey man, you live on the beach. You can appreciate this cool shark tooth necklace I'm wearing, right?
Poser!
I'll stop now because I don't want to spoil all of them, but the point is, this game is loaded with clever character designs. I used to speculate that if the series were more popular, there'd be a scene of people drawing their own original Xenos, but then I realized that the IPs that inspire that sort of thing usually have art styles that are simpler and more charismatic. Xenoclash is too cool for that because A, most of their character designs are extremely detailed, and B, the Xenoclash games seem to have a rule that every character needs to be at least a little bit hideous.
Usually at this point I'd threaten to mess up your face, but anything I did to yours would just make you prettier.
Everywhere you look, you see characters with malformed extra body parts, nasty bird feet, weird mouth things, and asymmetrical faces. Even our hero has a wrinkly, lopsided torso, star-shaped pupils, a bald dome, and nasty little armpit hairs all over his body. The best example is this guy Trolkus. He's got it all. Antlers, too many legs, too many arms, too many eyes, a jaw that splits in half, and a face that's half merged into his chest. I'm not kidding when I say this guy might be my favorite character design in any video game. I love how hideous these characters are. There's all kinds of media that likes to preach that beauty is only skin deep and ugly people have feelings and worries and dreams and felony charges just like the rest of us. But how many of them are willing to put their money where their mouths are and promote their products with characters that look like this? And Xenoclash Zero goes the extra mile by not only making the heroes just as ugly as the villains, but also going out of its way to show that almost every one of those villains is arguing with their shoulder angel over what they're doing.
Gotta be hard to get ahead. That's just how it is. Life gives you nothing unless you take it. So what if it's sad? Well, boo-hoo. I have to look out for myself. It's just how it is in Tennessee.
Xenoclash Zero wants you to know that even though they're the bad guys, there's still a part of them that knows what they're doing is wrong. Some of them even seem to genuinely believe what they're doing is for the best.
I'd do anything to bring order to Xenozoic. Getting to bashing a few heads is just a bonus.
And the sensitivity this game has for its villains goes even further, because even though this is a combat-focused action game, you hardly ever kill anyone. You usually just beat them into submission or out of consciousness so that they can fight you again later.
You again. Get out of my way.
Only 2 characters die in each playthrough, and both of their deaths are treated tragically.
Say the words.
His bones are earth. His flesh is dust.
This, too, is something I appreciate about the whole series. Death is rare and usually treated with a lot more respect than most combat-focused games. Speaking of combat-focused games, I mentioned earlier that this is a Dark Souls clone. In Dark Souls, you're not allowed to back out of your attacks, so if you don't want to get hit with a sledgehammer while you're busy swinging your sword, you need to plan ahead and schedule your strike in a time slot of safety long enough to fit your entire attack animation. That's why the standard Dark Souls strategy is to bait the other guy into taking a swing at you, then punish him for missing with a swing of your own. So what about Xenoclash Zero? Well, just like Dark Souls, you can't interrupt your own attack animations just by blocking or dodging. So the combat must be about baiting and punishing enemy attacks, right? Well, the problem with that is that some of the dudes you fight in Xenoclash Zero give such short notice about their attacks that you don't have time to react to them. So how are you supposed to get Gud if you can't read their attacks in time? The trick to beating these guys lies in mastering canceling, a game mechanic that I believe Xeno Zero took from fighting games. Unlike Dark Souls, you don't always have to wait for your attacks to finish before you can take evasive action, because if you press the dodge, parry, jump, or special attack button at the exact moment you hit an enemy, you can skip the rest of your attack animation and go straight into your next move immediately. The best part of this is that you can cancel into a dodge or jump, then use the light attack button to turn that dodge or jump into an attack that can then, itself, be canceled into another action, which can be yet another dodge or jump attack. There's no limit to the number of attacks you can string together this way. As long as you can keep anticipating when you'll hit the bad guys, you can keep canceling into new attacks until their health bars dry up. It's great because it lets you unleash a furious stream of knuckle sandwiches while still requiring enough deliberation to stop it from turning button mashing. And if you can keep the line of that sandwich buffet moving, you'll become unstoppable. Chaining all the different moves in your moveset together into a majestic waltz of face smashing is great stress relief. On top of being really fun and satisfying to pull off, this offensive strategy is what you'll need to keep yourself safe from those unpredictable strikes, because a lot of the dodge and jump attacks you can chain together are good at stunning. So instead of dodging or blocking, you can use a continuous volley of stunning strikes to keep the trash bag you're fighting pinned down and unable to hit you in the first place. Also, canceling into dodge attacks is a great way to keep yourself on your enemy's side, which is where you want to be because these guys have trouble attacking there. Since canceling is so effective, getting good at Xenoclash Zero is less about learning the timing of your enemy's attacks and more about learning the timing of your own. Of course, you still need to learn their attacks well enough to get in the driver's seat of the pain train, but once you get it moving, there's almost nothing they can do to stop you. But just because they can't stop you doesn't mean there aren't things that can. Their friends come to mind, usually with the heavy end of a sledgehammer. And when they do, they'll teach you that the stun lock and side-sticking strategies only let you bully one jerk at a time, and your moveset doesn't really have an answer for how to deal with his friends. If he only brought one friend to the fight, you can use your side dash attacks to keep yourself on the opposite side of the guy you're not pummeling. But if he brought any more than that, then any prolonged dance of pain you perform on one enemy is probably going to get interrupted by the audience. So to deal with crowds, instead of stun locking or sidestepping, you have to keep yourself outside the group, bait the closest jerk into attacking you, dash in after they whiff, punish it with just one counterattack, then dash back again. This strategy is effective, but the problem is that this game wants you to defeat every bad guy with a furious barrage of many strikes, which means that it can't let individual hits do too much damage. So if you find yourself in a fight against multiple health bars that you can only chip away at one hit at a time, that fight's gonna drag. And since the bait and punish with one hit at a time strategy is the only reliable way to prevent getting ganked, dragging describes just about every fight against more than 3 jerks at once. Sometimes you'll get lucky and one of them will throw themselves out so far from the rest of the group that you can risk going cashews on him for longer than usual, and enemies accidentally hitting each other helps speed things along a bit, but the fights against more than 3 enemies were the worst fights in the game for me. Fortunately, there weren't that many of them. I could only remember 2 while I was writing this part, but they left a bad impression. So the bad guys can stop the pain train after it's left the station with the power of friendship, but you can bring it to a screeching halt yourself if your fingers are too heavy. See, there's this move you can do by holding down the light attack button instead of tapping it. It does an Alaskan fluke ton of damage, but I never used it on purpose in any fight because it comes with an uninterruptible charge-up period that takes 2 whole seconds to finish cooking. That's 2 whole seconds where you can't do anything but watch Pseudo do his stupid Tai Chi form and hope that a nearby freak doesn't critique his technique with a stab from his sleek beak. But what's the problem with that? If I don't like the move, I just shouldn't use it, right? Well, remember that I said I never used it on purpose? That's because the threshold for how long you need to hold the button is so low that I did it by mistake all the time. Every so often, I'd accidentally lock myself into that despicable charge-up animation and could do nothing but hope I didn't get clobbered before it was over.
I did not hold it. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hold it. I did not.
Xenoclash Zero has weapons you can use, but they're not that exciting. Unlike most other games, where a new weapon means a permanent addition to your combat options and playstyle, these weapons all have the same 2 movesets and break after a few hits. The role that new weapons usually fill in action games is instead filled by stances. A stance is a new moveset for Pseudo that changes all the light attack combos. Sounds good, right? Getting some brand new moves to play with every once in a while? Well, it is, but not as good as it should be. Here's the problem. Just like weapons in Dark Souls, you can upgrade your stances and special moves with items you find in the world. But unlike Dark Souls, there's a set number of them in each playthrough. Once you've found them all, there's no way to get any more. So if you've already used all your upgrade items, you can't upgrade your new stances. And if you can't upgrade them, switching to that cool new set of smacks and kicks you just found means putting up with being weaker on top of not knowing how to use them yet. There aren't nearly enough upgrade items to upgrade all the stances and specials you'll find. Here's a chart that shows what you'd get if you spent all the upgrade items I found in my second playthrough as efficiently as possible. Of the 8 stances and 8 special moves I had, I only managed to upgrade 3 of each past level 7. Most of the remaining 5 didn't even make it past level 4. This doesn't encourage me to mix up my playstyle. I really hate it when games have weapon upgrade systems like this. The idea of being able to upgrade your gun or sword or whatever might sound cool on paper, but it almost always ends up killing the thrill of finding a new toy. When you upgrade a weapon you already have with resources you could use on other weapons, you're also relatively downgrading all the weapons you don't have yet without realizing it, and that just leads to not wanting to play with the new stuff. That's what happened to the stances and special moves in this game, and it's a shame because switching stances from time to time could have gone a long way toward bringing out more of the variety that's already here. Xenoclash Zero would have been better without stance upgrading. Overall though, I really liked the combat in Xenoclash Zero. It may be flawed, poorly explained, and full of extraneous features that it would be better off without, but it's cathartic and satisfying to master, and I never got tired of it. The cancel mechanic makes the fights feel fast without sacrificing deliberation, and the variety of different kicks and punches you can throw keep the fights interesting.
So I tells him, if you're gonna be calling the shots, you're gonna be calling them from Alpha Centauri 6.
Oh, you tell him right. You tell him straight. You tell him straight up.
Remember when I said there's a set number of upgrade items in each playthrough? Well, that applies to health brew ingredients too. Once they're gone, there's no way to grind them or buy more of them. And the level design isn't going to help you with this scarcity problem, because unlike other games, Xenoclash Zero doesn't really draw your attention to pickups in the environment. See this place here? Can you figure out which of these things you can pick up and which are just decorations without using your Witcher sense? I sure hope you can, because Pseudo doesn't have a Witcher sense. Don't get me wrong, these levels are gorgeous with their hatched painted art style, and the amount of detail Ace Team put into them is impressive. But flooding the world with so many non-interactive decorations makes it harder to notice the things you can interact with. However, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that, so far, I haven't actually said this is a bad thing, because as I spent more and more time in Xenozoic, my eyes got better and better at recognizing the things I could pick up. After a few hours, I didn't need a Witcher sense in the game, because I developed one in real life. So there's an argument you could make that the lack of attention being drawn to pickups makes item collection more satisfying, and may even have been an intentional decision on Ace Team's part. In principle, I like the idea of challenging the player's foraging skills, but I don't think it works so well here because it exacerbates the problems I have with the ungrindable upgrade items and brewing ingredients. Remember, if you run out of them, the only thing you can do to get more is go back and look for any you missed the first time. The good news on that front is that you probably will find more stuff by doing this, but the bad news is that that's because the level layouts are so complicated that it's very likely you missed a whole lot of optional paths your first time through. If you're trying to be thorough and make sure you explore all the side paths first before making further progress in the story, you'll probably get frustrated at how hard it is to keep track of which paths you've already checked because there's so many of them. But even if you're not so bothered about exploring the whole map, you'll still get frustrated because these level layouts are terrible at guiding you to the next story beat. There were plenty of times where I followed what felt like the designated pathway to progress straight into a dead end, or even more often, a locked door that could only be opened from the other side.
It's locked from the other side.
See this valley here? Where do you suppose I'm supposed to go next? Down the center of the valley?
Locked.
Nope. That just leads to a locked door. Into the cave the road is leading into? Nope. That just takes me to the same locked door.
It's not over. Every path betrayed me. I fed up with this world.
The correct answer was the other cave that doesn't have a road leading into it. Frequently, the path you need to make progress is somewhere off to the side, in a place your attention is visually drawn away from. So if you're not interested in hunting for secrets and just want to reach the next cutscene, the level design isn't going to guide you there, because despite what the featureless blobs on this useless map show you, this world is a maze that's easy to get lost in and difficult to comprehensively explore. Just like the absence of item highlighting, it's quite possible, in fact even more likely, that the maziness of the level layouts was intentional, but I never got more used to it the longer I played. Keeping track of where I had and hadn't been yet never stopped being annoying the whole way through both playthroughs. The level layouts could have benefited from trimming out about 30% of the paths. That being said, there is a way to make exploration much more reasonable. Whenever you reach a campsite, you can rest until the next day to refill your health, but you can also make pseudo-sleepwalk and explore the world at night. During nighttime, you can only explore places you've already seen during the day, plus a little further down the path to progress. Everything past that point turns into a cool line drawing that kills you if you stand in it too long. What's great about this is that if you stick to exploring the world at night first, not only is the explorable region of the world much smaller and more manageable, but the coloring book kill zone spoils which path leads to the next cutscene, so if you're trying to make sure you don't miss anything, you'll know exactly which path to avoid until you've explored everywhere else. Nighttime is also great for practicing the fights you have during the day. All the daytime fights you have with sapient enemies play out more like mini-boss fights than fights with regular enemies, but all these middle managers during the day have nighttime doppelgangers that act more like regular Dark Souls monsters. So if you're having trouble with one of Gemini's jerks, you can find one of their nightmare clones and use them as your Bob until you get the hang of them. The land of Xenozoic has a law that states that any fight must be preceded by this dice game called The Ritual, the loser of which has to fight with some kind of disadvantage, like being tied to a stake in the ground or being attacked by bees. You're not going to see much footage of the ritual in this video, because despite my channel name and logo, I don't really like board games or card games, and shoehorning them into action games hasn't helped me understand their appeal. Fortunately for me, most of the time you can choose not to do the ritual. There's only 3 of them you absolutely have to play, but you don't need to win them to progress because losing them just makes the fistfights afterwards harder. So the ritual didn't bother me too much, but I wish I could forfeit matches right at the beginning if I didn't want to go through the formality of losing at craps before every attempt at a boss fight. Even though I don't like playing the ritual, I'm still glad it's in the game, but to explain why, I'm going to have to go more in-depth about the story. I don't want to do that without giving you a chance to play it yourself before I talk about spoilers, so I'm going to end this video with my spoiler-free opinion of the story, and then my final judgment of Xenoclash Zero. I'll share more of my thoughts on the story in another post-spoiler video after this. Xenoclash Zero presents its father-son relationship pretty well, but don't expect God of War 4 because Ace Team didn't have nearly as many resources or people to work with. The dialogue seemed like it could have used a second pass in a few places, and I was disappointed to find the main plot wasn't as original or thought-provoking as the plots in the previous Xenoclash games. But there's a really great satirical element in the story that, along with a few other thought-provoking side elements, saved it from becoming just another run-of-the-mill power fantasy. Ultimately, I liked the story, but the embrace of a more straightforward central plot and characters in order to appeal to the mainstream concerned me a bit. So would I recommend Xenoclash Zero? Absolutely. I love it. It's creative, original, beautiful, and ugly in all the best ways. The combat's a lot of fun and satisfying to master, but fighting groups is tedious. The levels are too hard to navigate, but the scenery's gorgeous, so you'll at least be getting lost in cool places, and if you ever get really lost, you can always explore at night to find the way forward. The ritual's not my thing, but you can mostly ignore it if you know how. The rigid item scarcity is a real issue, but the systems make sure you still have a decent chance of making progress even when you run out of stuff, and even though you can't grind brewing ingredients or upgrade items, you can always grind your character's stats if things get too hard. It seems that for every problem I have with this game, there's some way to get around it, but a lot of the things I like about it are things I wish the rest of the game industry would do more often. So saying, "It's a 7 out of 10," or whatever, doesn't really express my feelings very well. More people should know about it! Is how I really feel, because I want there to be more games like this, and according to this YouTube comment, Xenoclash Zero didn't sell too well. That's why I made this video. It serves as not so much a review of Xenoclash Zero, but more an unsolicited, unpaid promotion for it, tempered with criticisms to strengthen the credibility of its praise. This game rules. Go play it. And stay tuned for the second, post-spoiler part of this video, where I go more in-depth about the story.